I was on the subway hurtling towards game night last night. And as I usually do, if I can find a seat and the subway is quiet, I'll pull out my phone and using Reader, roll through my feeds and see what's going on in some blogs I enjoy. I'm a big fan of Merrick's musings. I'm not super interested in the 5e 2024 versus 2014 stuff, but when I saw his article that was titled Backwards Compatible, Not Without Caveats, I decided to give it a read. He talks about the fact that, hey, 2024 D&D says it's backwards compatible with 2014 DVD, but you have to keep in mind some caveats. Let me just read through some of his blog directly so I, can't be accused of sort of miscommunicating his point. What does backwards compatibility mean? With respect to Dungeons & Dragons 2024 edition, it is very confused. Honestly, the game is mostly compatible with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition 2014, but there are areas where it falters. And I'm not going to bother with those. It's kind of beyond the scope of what caught my interest. Here's where the interesting part to me came up. I, Merrick, discovered another area where the compatibility falters. When running Kobold Press's Empire of the Ghouls on Monday, the book called for some poisonous snakes. Well, they no longer exist in 2024, but the conversion guide in the monster manual states that you use venomous snakes instead. No problem. Except Empire of the Ghouls gave an additional effect for these snakes when you fail your saving throw against their poison. If the participant fails the saving throw against the snake's poison damage, the participant doesn't take damage, but instead falls unconscious. This worked in 2014. Poisonous snakes had this attack. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but the important part is it says the target must make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw, taking 5 or 2d4 poison damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. In 2024, the venomous snake has this attack. In this case, it just does piercing damage plus 3 poison damage, or 1d6. Oh, look, no more saving throw. So the modification to the attack given in Empire of the Ghouls no longer works, and the story point that relies on that saving throw falls apart. And then he mentions that, hey, if you're experienced, you're probably going to get over this hurdle, but if you're a new player and you have the 2024 rules and you have an adventure like Empire of the Ghouls, you're running into a problem. You happen to have a mismatch, a three-way mismatch of you have the 2024 rules, you are also inexperienced, but you're running something from 2014, you're going to run up into these incongruencies, so haha, backwards compatibility, not so fast. Did anyone think that if they say it's backwards compatible, that they mean that everything from third parties, second parties, first parties was going to be absolutely compatible backwards? I mean, I don't even know how that could be a thing because clearly they're making changes. And if they're making changes, something's going to break or get twisted or at least come out of alignment. I mean, otherwise, you're not making changes at all. You're just copying the 2014 rules. So some things are going to have to be adjusted. And I don't think there should be any illusions that backwards compatibility means that everything is going to work perfectly, especially when you take into part third-party content, of which there's just tons, whether it's written well or designed well or poorly or whatnot. Then no. The backwards compatibility means that regardless of what that author did, whether it's Kobold Press, whether it's just some yahoo on DM's Guild, no, it's all going to work well. I think we're kidding ourselves. I just think about video games. When we talk about consoles being backwards compatible, it usually means that for the most part it'll work, usually with first party stuff, but there's always exceptions in places where things either don't work quite right or exceptions have to be made. Not everything is going to work, right? We're changing the hole that the peg goes into. If the pegs were not designed for that hole, they may not fit all the way. And, usually you can kind of jam them in there, wiggle them and get them in there, but it's not going to be a perfect fit. I don't think this is written very well. I think it's a poor design choice by Kobold Press, just in terms of what they're trying to do. When we go and we look at the part in the book, which is Empire of the Ghouls, and it appears on page 129, it talks about these venomous poison snakes. If the participant fails the saving throw against the snake's poison damage, the participant doesn't take damage, but instead falls unconscious. Now that seems fine, right? Hey, you failed the saving throw. Instead of taking the poison damage, you take this. But it's weirdly written. You let me know if I'm misinterpreting this. What the module is doing is replacing an effect, the effect of the poison. They want to replace whatever that original effect of the poison is with falling unconscious. But instead of in the text swapping effects, they replace the effect and then tie it to the mechanic. And this could have all kinds of ramifications, regardless of whether you moved from 2014 to 2024. Any weird edge case where they don't make a saving throw, this is going to come up. I think blaming this on the game just seems to be misplacing the blame. I think this is just kind of a little bit of a badly worded effect. And it would have been much clearer. And by the way, would have bypassed everything just to say, hey, if the participant suffers poison damage, instead of that damage, they fall unconscious. Bada bing, bada boom. And then guess what? Regardless of how we change mechanics, regardless of what system we're playing, if we wanted to convert this to another system, all I got to look at as a GM is, oh, did they suffer poison by whatever means they get there in this particular context? Then instead of that poison, whatever that does, they fall unconscious. I'm not interested in the 2014 to 2024 stuff. I just ran across this randomly and gave it a read. Hold Hasbro Wizards to account. I don't need to give them an inch. I have no sympathy for them. At the same time, though, if we're going to look at backwards compatibility and insisting that that means that everything, no matter how it's written, has to be absolutely compatible, otherwise we got to throw all kinds of caveats on there. I mean, there should be caveats already. Seems to be just a little bit, I don't know, unfair, unkind. I'm not sure what exactly. Really, I don't care. But it did highlight to me what I think is just a failure, a fault in the original text and not in anything that D&D is doing, which is if you're swapping effects, why are you doing it on the mechanic and not just talking about the effect? What do you think? Is that how they should have written it up? You could just write that in a better way. Be specific. If we're replacing the effect, why are you talking about the mechanic? Just worry about the effect. And then it doesn't matter how the mechanic changes. Game on, everybody. Talk to you later.